So to answer your question, I'll be drawing from primary research that we've been doing in Colombo over the last 4 years in low-income communities in Colombo. Um, so basically, um, I'm not going to get into a lot of the statistics because I think the first panel with Madhulika and Ilan covered that. But to say that most of the working class poor in Colombo went into the economic crisis, not yet recovering from the COVID lockdown period, where they were already heavily in debt, had accumulated huge areas when it comes to their electricity, water bills, their rent, mortgages, leasing. So there had already been a significant asset loss by the time the economic crisis started, say, or at least it started being felt in early to mid 2022. So in that sense, you have to take the impact of the economic crisis and of the IMF reforms with that in mind. So to say that it didn't start at that point, but these are these impacted communities who had been kind of struggling for quite a while. There have been quite a lot of impacts, but I think for today, to answer your question on this panel, um, I'll just talk about two particular types of impact through this reform program. One is through the electricity tariff hikes, and the other one is regard to the impact on nutrition and education. So one of the, oh, sorry, I forgot I had slides, I kept looking up. So these are, these are some of the key issues that we've been seeing in Colombo. And I'm happy to pick up any of the others during the Q&A. But here I'll just talk about the issues around disconnection and the impact on nutrition and health. So just to give you an example, a lot of the communities that we work with, the number of units that they use, even if it's for a small house, is almost the same as what you would see in a middle-class home. And that's because Colombo's urban poor, their development indicators are extremely high. And you can't compare that with other global south cities in terms of infrastructure, in terms of access to the grid, in terms of assets. They are on par with middle class homes, even if they're income poor or if their savings are low. So in that sense, when you have something like a 400% electricity tariff hike in less than 1 year at a time, and the first hike came, if you remember, when food inflation was 90%. So it was sort of back-to-back shocks. So an electricity bill of about 1,500 immediately went up to about 8,000. And in the last 2 years, what we've seen is, I have personally seen dozens of electricity bills that are in the 6 figures. The stories of disconnection are immense. So if you have all these kinds of competing expenses, and it's not just electricity, right? You saw food go up, you saw transport go up, you saw water go up, everything went up. And then obviously what happens is something has to give. And the first thing that gives is what you eat. So we saw communities cutting back first on the number of things they were eating, the number of nutritious things they were eating, then finally the number of meals they were eating. So, and it's again not just a matter of weeks. Here what we're seeing is people who are used to a diverse plate of food now reduced to eating very starch heavy, carbohydrate heavy. It's basically looking at addressing hunger and not nutrition. So in that sense, yeah, I think you can keep it here. So in that sense, what you see is you will have long-term impact on health, on education because of these kinds of cutbacks. And so this is a picture that actually someone in the community took last year. And it is a demonstration of, like, this for them is a treat. And the plate without the egg is actually the mother's plate. The egg, she only had money for 1 egg, which she cut into 2 and she gave to the 2 kids. So you see those kinds of sacrifices right across the board. And if you go to the next slide, so basically what our work is showing is that this is basically what a food plate looked like in early 2019. This is what a food plate looks like, the last one, on a really good day. And this is also not all 3 meals, this would be 1 meal. And And I think to bring it back to the question and what we're talking about here today about austerity, about economic crisis, about reforms, is to say that when you look at this plate of food, it's not enough to, this is not a reflection of just price. It is not just a reflection of inflation. It's a reflection of how much was their electricity bill, how much was their water bill, and did paying those things that month, it affects what you can buy. Because then you're going to buy what is the cheapest, what requires the least amount of energy. So, for example, if you're low on money, if you're low on gas, you're not going to buy things like chickpeas, like mungata, because they take a really long time to cook. So you're going to be eating and buying things that are really fast to cook, doesn't require a lot of water to cook with, and doesn't require any other sort of electrical appliances like fridges, like rice cookers, which are all time-saving devices that people use to cook. So to say that looking at this plate of food, you have to think of sort of a constellation of things that are going into everyday decision making about what people are eating. And then that brings us to what is a broader problem across the board, which is a lack of social protection in this country for people. Why are we at a time when food inflation was so high, we were going through an economic crisis, we were having, queue upon queue upon queue, why are we then going towards more targeted social protection schemes like Aswasuma that are actually penalizing people for having worked hard? Because we have this rhetoric, right? If you want to do well, if you don't want to live on benefits, you have to work hard. So what does hard work look like? Hard work looks like a permanent house. Hard work looks like a gas cylinder. Hard work looks like a indoor bathroom. Hard work looks like electricity connection. Hard work looks like a motor bicycle. If you have any of those things, you get a score of 0 in Aswasuma. So these 22 indicators that were developed in early 2019, before Easter, before COVID, before economic crisis, are being used to score people at the peak of an unprecedented economic crisis. So we don't even have I don't even know what the word is at that time. If you're a government servant, if you're a World Bank official, if you are an IMF official, if you are okay with this level of targeted selection of beneficiaries, of people who are genuinely struggling to put even 2 meals on the table, I think that shows, I think for me that demonstrates exactly the kind of way that the everyday person is viewed in Sri Lanka. The IMF has a ceiling on IMF has a floor on social protection, which means it has declared the minimum amount we have to spend on social security. And I think it's really telling that we are maintaining the floor. We are not even thinking of going up. So technically we are not breaking any rules, but we are not making life better for everyday people either. And just to end to say that, the queues are gone. Everything looks the same on the street, but at least with the communities that we work with, we feel that things are actually a lot worse now than they were 2 years ago. So to say that life may look normal, the queues may be the same, but availability doesn't always mean affordability. Thank you.